Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. And today's topic of discussion would be RPA testing, because we all would agree to that developing an RPA solution and deploying it is as important as actually testing all possible test scenarios that is possible. So we're gonna see that how do we do it and why testing is actually so important in RPA. So what do we need when we actually go on testing an RPA solution? So we need RPA Studio Pro, we need Developer Pro license, and then we need a package that we can install from managed packages named UiPath.testing.activities. So that is the package that we need to install if we want to test our scenario, we want to test a solution using the test manager or the testing thing that is provided by UiPath. So why do we actually need to test? So as you can see that RPA is an automation in general require maintenance effort, and proactive maintenance is always better than reactive maintenance, because when we are doing proactive maintenance, which means in the initial phase wherein we are developing and we are initially deploying it, if we are proactively maintaining our solution, it would actually save us a lot of ROI, save us a lot of effort, time, as well as money. So that is why, so if we see what actually breaks the robot, so there are three main causes. It could be application changes, it could be environment issues related to some machine dependent issues or some environment issues, or it could be automation related issues. So if we put forward some initiatives or put forward some check while we are developing it, which is actually a proactive maintenance, so the expected savings and the actual saving would definitely have a less difference. So what we are actually expect to save while putting that RPA solution in place and what is our actual saving, the difference would definitely be less. Whereas if we go by reactive maintenance, which means once we have deployed and we would go on that, okay, whenever any problem would come, only then we're going to go and maintain it, or then we're going to look after the error and fix it. So that is actually reactive maintenance, and there are expected saving and actual saving. The difference between the two actually increases a lot. So mainly in the RPA life cycle, or if I talk about in RPA processes, it is very important that we do proactive maintenance if we actually want the expected outcome. So if we are say planning to save $100 by the end of every year or by the end of every month, so that is what our expected saving is. If we want to be near about that figure, if you want to actually save that much amount by deploying our RPA process, so it is very important that we do this proactive maintenance, which means in our cycle only the testing thing is involved very nicely, which means we keep on testing and deploying everything that we come across. So fixing a bug needs to be done when it first appears, and not that we wait that that bug when comes in production and gets reported, only then we are going to fix it. So this is RPA shift left, that we fix the bug whenever it is required to, or whenever it is first appearing, and not wait for that, okay, when it will come in production, only then we are going to deploy it. So moving further, what breaks the robot? So as we did talk about, it is application changes. It could be technical changes, it could be business requirement changes. Then it could be environment changes, that there's some performance issue, there is some dependency issue, there is some data related issue, or some update has come onto that particular system. Or it could be automation related issues, that the object is not getting recognized, or there has been changed in the selector, or there is some recovery handling issues. So these all are the things that actually break the robot. And we'll have to keep on maintaining it. We'll have to incorporate the testing thing so much in our cycle that whenever the robot comes across any fallout due to any of this XYZ reason, we immediately fix it and do not wait for it to come in production. And we also have to make sure, see, there are some issues that we can of course avoid if we do the testing properly. If we have tested 100% of all the activities and all the branches that we have developed, if we do it, then we can of course avoid a lot many issues that would occur in production. So that is what we should be doing while we are developing an RPA process and actually deploying it in production. So therefore, always go for proactive maintenance. So during development only, there are a lot of application changes. So if we can actually see that, okay, how frequent is the change and how robust we can make our selectors, so that minute changes in the application does not actually affect our automation. So we can actually keep a check on it. We can make a selector very robust. We can make use of object repositories so that even if there is some change, it does not require us a lot of effort from our side to, implement that change or fix that bug. So that is why during development, we can look after a lot of application changes. Then environment issues is something which is that IT operations, of course, manages environment. So if there is any environment changes issue, which is of course very less, the environment changes issue is comparatively very less. So that is also something that once we test it on our test server, we would still get a little bit of idea of what sort of environment issues we can expect, or from our past RP experience, we can still somehow guess that what sort of environment issues we can expect and how we can avoid it or how we can monitor it in early phase of production. And then we have business, which manages, of course, daily business. So that is, of course, high maintenance. So we'll have to keep a check on it, that okay, if there is any issue, say if it's development related issue, if it's because of application changes or because of environment changes, if there is something that we can avoid it in early stages or while during development, we should always go for proactive maintenance and not reactive maintenance. So this is again that development and IT operation issues, like which is environment related issues and development related issues or the application related issues, that can still be avoided due to RPA testing. Whereas if there is any business related issue, then of course it comes under low maintenance, which means it does not require a lot of maintenance and still can be tackled. So then there is continuous RPA development and testing. So continuous integration provides a framework for building, packaging, and testing software with, of course, an end goal of making our development a low maintenance task, which means it does not require a lot of effort, time, and money. So that actually allows us to successfully scale RPA within our own enterprise. So that is something which is recommended, that we go with continuous RPA development so that it does not require a lot of effort from our end. So plan, then design, then implement, then test, and then only go on deploying it into the production. So the goal is to turn RPA from a high maintenance to a low maintenance activity, and that is only achievable if we test it thoroughly. Then we have continuous RPA development, which is the same as we discussed, that we first plan, we then design it, we then implement, we test, and then only we go on deploying. So this is something that goes on continuous, that whatever, even if we have to do a small change, we actually plan it, that how are we going to do the changes so that minimum code changes are required. Then we design it, then we implement it, and then only we move on further for deploying it. So this should be a continuous cycle, that you follow this continuous cycle and then only go on deploying it. So scaling RPA requires continuous RPA development, which requires continuous RPA testing. So let's see that how we can make use of UiPath test suite to implement all of this. So there are 4 levels of RPA testing, the first being unit testing. So now what is unit testing? So it is called unit testing because the functionality of an automation project should be broken down into units or components. And that is the reason why it is being set to make our RPA program modular, which means we can test it module by module, which means unit by unit. And unit testing has the greatest effect on the quality of the project when it is actually integrated into the entire automation process. So in unit testing, non-essential or complex objects should be replaced with mock objects, because of course you're not going to do an end-to-end run. So wherever it is required to pass some dummy value to actually test it, it should be done. And that is why it is the most effective one. Then we have integration testing. So now this focuses on interaction between the components, which means when we are testing individual workflows, and now when we combine all of those workflows, passing of the input and output arguments, so integrating everything, how it's going to work. And this can only be done by professional testers or by RPA developers. So now the beauty of RPA is that the developers can also test it. And I mean, they majorly can test it well, because They know how they actually have to integrate the entire workflow and how each module can be even tested. How each module can even be tested individually. So that is integration testing. Then we have system testing. So now the focus here is the entire system. So in a large end-to-end automation, this would come after the different components have been tested in different configuration and scenarios. So it actually requires a dedicated pre-production environment, which is an exact replica of our production environment. And that is where we're going to conduct our testing. So we get the same experience of how the automation would go when it actually goes live. So that is what system testing is. Then we have acceptance testing, which is also called UAT, which is user acceptance testing. And it is usually performed by the end users or by the business users. And the goal here is to check if the target audience, the person who is going to use our solution and for whom we have developed it, they interact with the software differently than the developers have intended, because they are much aware of all the business rules or the business logic of how the application should be performing in all positive and negative scenarios. So now they test it, and they test it on all possible test cases that they have to, and that is called user acceptance testing. After getting approval on user acceptance testing is when we go on with the go live preparation of our solution. So now there are two things. One is basic and the other is data-driven test case. So of course, when we go on testing, we have a certain test cases on which we test. Some are positive, some are negative, some are application, like we check that whether how would our process react if the application goes down, or how would our process react if the environment is not working. So these are the different possible test cases you can think of. And when we talk about, so there are basically two type of different test cases. One is basic. So the basic test case runs with a single set of data, and it typically verifies the outcome against static value, that we hard code the values and then we see what our solution is going to return. And then we verify that, okay, the solution has returned it correctly or not. Then we have data-driven test case. It typically uses an Excel file with variations of data. So say we have 10, 20 different type of test data, and then we see the outcome against each test data or each row of that Excel file. So a basic test case can easily be converted into a data-driven test case by adding the file with the data variation. So this, we would be seeing it practically, that how do we actually go on testing our automation with variation of test data which are present in an Excel file. So that is actually what we're going to see when we install the testing package, and what is that RPA testing that comes with Studio Pro. So we are going to see that functionality that has been provided by UiPath when we have to test our process. So that's all. Now let's go and just check that how do we actually go on testing a particular process. So now towards the practical implementation, this is a site where we would be converting hash of the word UiPath using different algorithms, and we would be checking the result. So now how we would normally test it is we would simply run it. So this automation does nothing. It would type the word UiPath and then would select the hash. As of now, I've hard coded the value. So the word would be UiPath and the hash method would be MD5. And it's going to just get the result and then print it. So this is what normally a tester would do, or an RP developer would do to test it, that it's going to type that thing and get the result. So now if we see it in the output pane, we've got the result. Now, if we had to verify it, that whether it is calculating the hash using different algorithms correctly or not, we do have an Excel file present here, which actually has the result, that what should actually be the converted hash for different hash algorithms that we pick in. So if we had to actually test it, it would become a little tedious if we actually go on checking the result using the hash method, because of course it is a bit difficult to test it, or either we would have to write a different code to actually test it. So that is what the UiPath.testing.activities does easier for us, is we can actually create a test case, and which would actually traverse across all the rows that are present in that Excel and would actually check that whether everything has been tested correctly or not. So you can see I have UiPath.testing.activities package already installed. So now I would create a test case for it, and it is pretty simple. All you have to do is you can right click on this particular thing and you can write create test case. Once I do it, I can name anything. I would name it test case only and I'll click on next, or I could just simply go on creating. When I do create it, I actually get 3 blocks here. One is given, the other is when, and the third is then. So what are these actually? So the first given section, so this is the block where the initialization is done in order for the test case to perform correctly. So now, for example, the environment is prepared by opening the right application. As for this case, we actually have to open our Chrome browser and navigate to that particular URL. And then configuring them. The variables and arguments are being initialized with the needed value and so on. Then we have the when block, where actually the RPA workflow that is being invoked. So that actually has the data and all the things that we have to do, which means, entering UiPath, then entering what method, then clicking on the calculate hash, and then getting the value. So that is the place where exactly the exact steps required to execute a test cases are being executed. Then we have then block. So this then block is actually the verification point, and it's where we actually compare what our test case output is from when to the output that if we have anything to compare it with. So this is the outcome phase. So now for our case, what we have to do is we'll have to open a browser. Okay. So now the given phase is actually, keeps on, so it's an initialization phase. So it would initialize it for all possible test cases. So if we actually have to avoid that, we do not have to initialize it for all possible cases. So we can actually open the browser outside it. Okay. So that it does not actually go on initializing it for all the phases. Or we can have an counter or a check sort of something, or, go on closing the browser after we've done it. So we can close it in then phase as well. So we can open it here. We can choose it to be the Chrome browser. We can pass in the URL, which is SHA1 online. So we'll pass in the URL here. So we have passed the URL. So it would open, but it would keep on opening the URL every time. Okay. Then we have this SHA check, wherein we would actually go on, putting these things that, okay, it's MD5, it's UiPath. Now, as for our case, what would happen? This would every time check for this particular test case only. So it is actually a basic test case. But if we have to make it data driven, so what we have to do is we'll have to click on test case and we'll have to make it add test data. So now we'll add the test data here and we'll make this basic test case turn into data driven test case. So it has by default all the lines selected. We can of course select few lines and remove other and all of that. So as of now, we'll go on selecting all. So we'll click on import. So once we've imported, you can see it says data successfully imported from result.xlsx. And you can now access the data in your test case via arguments, which means the test case that we just uploaded is now available to us. And what we can do, we can simply use that. So see, we have got hash method. And hash word would of course remain UiPath only. And then we have result. So now we know that we have to compare the result with the result that we already have in the Excel. Okay. So for that, what would happen? That we'll have to compare it. And for that, first we'll have to store the value that is being returned from this when block. We'll have to, so we'll have to save it. So we'll save it as extracted word. Okay. So this is the one that is being extracted, and then we would be comparing it the one that is saved in the Excel. So we have saved it. We'll make it scope not as when, whereas as test case. Now we'll have to actually verify it. And for verifying it, we actually have 3 activities present with UiPath.testing activities. We have verify control attribute, we have verify expression, and we have verify expression with operator. So if we simply have to verify expression, we can use verify expression. but we have to if verify it using an operator, say less than equal to, greater than equal to, contains, and all of this, then we'll use verify expression with operator. If we have to verify control attribute, which means on the screen, if there is any element and we have to check that whether the attribute of this particular thing changes, say AA state or AA name, if you have to see that it actually changes, then we'll use verify control attribute. As for our purpose, we'll use verify expression with operator. So if we open that particular Excel, we'll have to compare the result with the extracted result that we've extracted. Okay, so we'll use extracted word is the one that will get out from here, and we'll compare it with the result saved in the Excel. Now, since this given when and then would be executed every time, we can keep on closing the Chrome. Okay, because what is happening, otherwise it will keep on opening Chrome for all the instances. So we can simply close the Chrome here. Okay, or we can even close the Chrome inside this. Okay, so after it has extracted the value, we can even kill the Chrome here. So we'll kill the Chrome here. Now, when you actually develop a data-driven test case, you actually get two extra thing here, which is run file with data variation and debug file with data variation. We'll go with debug file with data variation, and instead of actually selecting all the values, we'll say select 2-3 random values. Okay, so we'll select 2-3 random values and we'll click on run. So what it would do is it would open the Chrome. It would actually pick up the 3 data variations that we've selected and would then go on validating that whether it's all correct, it's matching with the Excel, or it isn't matching with the Excel. Okay, so that is what this particular data-driven test case of ours is going to do. Let's wait for the execution to stop. Okay, so it has stopped. Now, if we go open it here, you can see it has print verification passed for this, verification passed for this, and verification passed for this. Okay. Now, what if the verification does not passes for one of it? Okay. So we'll go to results. We'll make a slight change and say this one. We'll add 1 here, which means the verification for this one would then fail. So let's go and execute it again. So we'll again go with debug file with data variation, and we would select these two and we'll click on run. So as of now, we know that for the first one, the verification would not pass because of course we have changed the result in the file. So the verification would fail. So we would actually want to see that what happens when actually the verification of a particular thing fails. So let's go and check it. Okay, I think it did pass for both of them. And why it did pass? Because we did change a value while exporting the result, but we'll have to update the test data because we did not update the test data. So we'll just simply update the test data and we'll run it again. Okay, so see, now we have actually updated the value for this particular one. So we'll update all test cases using the same data and we'll update it. And now we'll go on again running the file with data variations, and we'll select these two because now we have the updated data present, and now it would fail for the first one because we have of course changed the data. So if you're actually making a change on the file, we'll have to first update the test data because your program actually contains an old test data file. So we did miss to update, but then we updated it. So we'll just wait for the execution to stop. And it has stopped. And now you can see the verification for one of them failed. Okay. So this shows that how you can, easily test it, everything, which means using the Excel file, you can actually test it. Now, another interesting thing to note here is you can actually see the past test cases. You can see the failed test cases. You can see the not executed test cases. It is showing 0 because we only selected 2. Okay, so you can see that, okay, we've tested this, and this, whereas remaining others we haven't tested. So this would also help us in checking the ones that we've not tested. Then we have an activity coverage setting as well. Okay, so if we want to see uncovered activities, if there are any, so let's go and see if there are any uncovered activities. So as of now, there are no uncovered activities. Okay. Uncovered activities are, suppose if there is any branch or anything that has not been executed in our flow. So see over here, if you can see all the green ones is, which means all the activities that we have in our workflow has been tested. It has been executed once. So if there's any activity that has not been tested, it would show in uncovered testing. It would be marked as red, which means you'll know exactly that which branch of a program is not tested, which means you are sure that this would definitely not throw error. But if there is any red colored activity, which means it has not been tested, it could throw some object reference error, it could throw some element not found or selector not found error. So this is another advantage, that if there is any red mark thing, so now as of now for us, activity coverage is 100. You can go to test explorer and you can select this. So if your activity coverage is not 100, it's 70%, 80%. So you exactly know that which branch now you have to test, and you'll know which test case is now you have to test. Okay. So this is how you can make use of UiPath.testing.activities to thoroughly test your process, which would actually help you in saving a lot of effort, time, and increasing your ROI. So make use of UiPath.testing.activities while you're testing your RPA process before deploying it to production. Because as I said, proactive maintenance is far better than reactive maintenance. So thanks for watching the video. If you have any queries, drop it in the comment section below and I'll address it. See you in the next video, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.